Hello, we are going to talk about the color in architecture and interior design. This is a very important aspect. Color is the visual effect that it's caused by the spectral composition of light emitted, transmitted, or reflected by objects. So we know that without light, we won't be able to read and see the colors. So light, it's a necessity for the site, and for us as architects, it's actually a utility. It's something that we use every day. And the light, it's not only allow us to see the different colors, but also the different textures of the materials that we use. We can see here some pictures of interior spaces and also facades of buildings, and how the light and the game of light and shadow can make architecture feel more alive and expressed in a way to make it like a meaningful uh, movement for to control the behavior of people when they are around. Light can be reflected or can be absorbed depending on the color that the building has, also depending on the texture of the material, also about the opacity or the vibrancy of the color that the surface has. So we see color as is a property of light. It's an element of our visual perception that it's related to our eyes receive the color. Um, we can only experience architecture, we can only feel and create some suspense in our architecture paths, indoors and outdoors, by the control of light, with the opening of or windows, or also with some openings in the ceilings, and sometimes even on the floor. Also making some holes in the building that provides the light, the access of the light to the interior, and spreads it around through the interior space of the project. The main important aspect that I would like you all to know is how the choice of color affects the behavior of people on your design. We have different types of color systems. We are going to go like very briefly and shortly to some of them. The main thing at the end is to know the characteristics of each color and how they can go along with our conceptual approach to achieve a particular goal in our projects. One of the most well-known color systems is the Munsell color system, and this gray square that you have in front of you, I think, synthesized this color system in a very good way. So basically this color system divides the color in three properties that are the hue, the value, and the saturation. And you can see with in the gray square that you have the value that it can range vertically from the 0 to the 10. That it depends on the 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 amount of, let's say, the white or gray inside a particular color. And then we have what we call the hue, that is the circle that goes around, that can range from different colors: blue, green, yellow, red. And then you have the chroma, and the chroma, it's the horizontal line that goes perpendicular to the value to us and passes through a specific hue. So then if you are going through the blue, you'll have something more like the purple blue, or the blue green, or that. Then going from, let's say, the more it approached to the center, to the value, or that it goes out of it. So to make it clear, the first one that everyone knows, it's the U. So U represents the name of the color. It's the pure state of the color. So this is what we call green, what we call blue, what we call purple, what we call orange. And this is what distinguishes one color from the other one. Now the second property is the value. And here you have a graphical representation. You can see the value in a vertical way that approaches more towards the white or towards the black down in the base, and then to a particular kind of chroma in this kind of range of purples. And the value refers to the lightness or the darkness of a color, and actually depends on the contrast the context that it's involved in. We have here a picture from Bahaga where we can see that the value can add emphasis to the architecture because it can give contrast, let's say in this kind of pinkish, very bright color, and then with the other part of the buildings that are in shade that are kind of contrasting and giving the emphasis of that pink wall that it's in the back. So we say that for this reason, we say that value can invoke our feelings and moods. It can affect our behavior when we are inside of the building. And we can go even beyond that, and we can say that when we go through, let's say, the light values, when we are kind of going towards the white side, we are like passing through evoking happiness and lightness. When we go through the mid-range, then we are going to evoke sadness and depression. And when we go to the low dark values and low key images, then we can create feelings of fear and mystery. So playing with this, with the context and the value, can actually help us to emphasize a specific concept in architecture and interior design. Saturation, it's the last property that we can see in the Monceau color scheme. And saturation can also be referred as chroma. So chroma or saturation, they indicate the same thing. And here it refers to the brightness or the dullness of a color. So high saturation are close to the pure hue of a color, and then the more that you go, far away from it, then it becomes low saturated colors and colors that are more, let's say, muted or neutrals. So chroma, it's the quality that distinguishes the difference from a pure hue to a gray shade. So here down you can see this red line with different shades of red, ranging from the darkest to the lightest color. This is what we know as the chroma. Now another system that we know, it's the color wheel, and this is basically a color circle based on red, yellow and blue, and this is what it's mainly used in the field of art. However, there are other types of wheels that are used, and let's say scientists use a different color, graphic designers also had a different color. In our case, we use the color wheel, and one that we learn since we have art classes is the three-part color wheel. So we know this as the primary colors, red, yellow and blue, and then we have the secondary colors, green, orange and purple, that are made from the mixing of two primary colors together. And then for last we have the tertiary colors that are formed by mixing a primary and a secondary color together. I think that visually the diagram, it's very effective in trying to explain this. So like I explained, then we come up with the part that it's more important for us, color psychology. So color in architecture and interior design, it's crucial to kind of conveying the human behavior. With the decisions of your color scheme that you will have different feelings, and you'll expose your users to different feelings when they are inside or outside of your project. It's like, we can say that color is like a it's a visual language, so everyone can understand it, and can be attracted or repelled and perceive the space in different ways just by the choice of the color. Now, when we talk about the behavior of people, we are going to talk about warm colors, and then we are going to talk about cool colors, and then neutral colors. The warm colors that everyone knows are going to range from the red, orange, so from the red to the yellow, passing through the orange. So the variations of those three colors we call warm colors. And usually those three colors, they are associated with like energizing, passionate, and positive feelings. When we have the red usually symbolize like the strength, the warmth, the energy. You'll see that for each color that we are going to show, there's always like a positive and a negative feeling related to it. Okay, so we always have the two spectrums. It also depends on how you design and the type of textures and the type of shapes. So all the other elements are brought together, and also how they are arranged, with which principles they are arranged to convey the message to the user. So one thing, red, it's one of the most powerful colors, and if you look at logos of brands, you'll see that there are lots of familiar brands that you know that use warm colors, especially red in their logos, because it's the longest wavelength. As it's a very powerful color that attracts our eyes, and it technically it's not the most visible, but it's the one that grabs our attention first. So in the negative part, it could also be related to some like the fire and violence or some aggression, but usually it's more towards the positive, for the love, the passion, the basic status of survival, like the fight or flight. um, and we see here implementations of red in a facade, but also in a staircase inside of the building. And we see that through contrast and rhythm and repetition, they are kind of giving us different ideas, associating with different feelings when we are looking at those spaces. The orange is a physical, provides us some physical comfort. It's related to warmth, security, passion. It's fun, but it could also be related to, immaturity, deprivation. It's a very energetic and vibrant color. And again, it could be used outside or inside. And depending on the way that it's put it together, it could represent different things. It could also represent change and movement. And it's normally associated with vitality in the projects. Yellow, it's a very emotional color. In the positive side, we have it's related to, creativity, friendliness, optimism, but it could also be related to anxiety or suicide or even depression. So we usually have to have a balance and try to relate it with other colors that can create a positive stimulus inside our project. Um, of course, for all the colors, we are just seeing now, we are talking more about the hue, but depending on, the chroma and the intensity of that, the light or the dark yellows or the blue, there's a variation that also provides different feelings. So overall it's like this, but sometimes when we are like using dark yellows or gold hue yellows, we can kind of connected to antique or designs that are, the sense of permanence, like immortal, always there, always in kind of fashion, very formal kind of design. When we go through the cool colors, we are talking about colors like green, blue, and purple. And they are normally associated with colors of nature, night, water, They are more reserved than the warm colors, and they are considered to be calm and relaxing. The green, we normally in architecture, the green color mainly comes from the use of vegetation. I'm not saying that we cannot apply in the building. Of course, we have an example here that is using like green and yellow in a facade, but many times when we use the green, it comes from, you know, the grass or the bushes or the trees. The same thing happens when we think about, you know, the brown. Normally we associate it also with the material that it's the wood. So there are some colors that we can actually, when we are using, we are linking them not as kind of paint, but a specific natural material that already has that color embedded in. So the green, because of the nature, when we kind of implement it, not just as a color, but with nature, it's kind of related with the harmony and balance and peaceful and restful place. But it could also be some kind of board, depend on the way that, again, you use this in your design. And here there's a green wall that it's representing, and it's also like providing us a texture and the different values of green that are exposed there. For the blue it's considered as related to communication, serenity, reflection. Normally we see this in the water. So water, it's for us, it's like the blue, and this is a state of mind that usually relaxes. And again, in the blue, and also as the other colors. If we think about the blue, there are different ranges of blue, and sometimes, you know, the like dark ranges of blue are more associated with kind of institutional colors, more formal colors that are used in many governmental buildings, and if we go back to, you know, graphic design, also in logos and brands. The same thing happens with purple. In a way, we can kind of link the purple to a spiritual state. It's the shortest wavelength, the purple wavelength, and in a dark, the dark purple also gives a sense of health, wealthy and luxurious space. And when you use the light purples like the lavender, they are usually associated with spring and romance. So again, it's not just the hue, it's also the variation that requires some thought. Now, with the neutral colors, I'll say that this is like the architect's palette. We really, this is like the base where everyone starts. Normally, almost all the projects cover those colors, and they are seen as a background of our design. They could be brighter or darker depending on the way that we think about them in our projects. Black, again, can have a negative, could be related to coldness and oppression, but at the same time, it's like the black and white that it's always kind of in fashion. In fashion, sorry. Sophistication, glamour, safety, substance. Black is essential an absence of light since no wavelengths are reflected in. Okay, it can communicate with clarity the project, and especially when you combine the black and the white, then you can have like a very big contrast and conveying specific messages to the users. White is the total absorption, black is the total absorption of, so there's no wavelength. So the white is a total reflection, is exactly the opposite. You can see here that it could be related to purity, simplicity, sophistication, but at the same time could look a little bit cold or unfriendly. That's why many times we go through cream or to beige range, so we can break out some of this kind of aggressive feeling that we get for the white. That's why we have warm whites that are more appealing to the users inside the projects. And normally there's the white is used in, I would say, like 70 to 80% of the interior design or even architecture projects. The gray, it's they say that the pure gray, it's the only color that it has no psychological properties. It's important to understand how the colors in architecture are so related to the material. So when we think about gray, we immediately will think about things like concrete or granite. They will come to our minds. So most of the times when we think about a particular color, we actually relate it to a specific material that we will use. Or, as I explained, in the green or the brown or the blue, to a specific nature or an environment. So the brown is a positive, it's related with nature. So it can look like warm and softer. Um, and it's often associated with the earth, the wood, and the stone. And it's used as a common background for many interior design projects. The beige and the tan, it's the same thing. It could be seen through the wood, the use of the wood with brighter tones, and it depends, can change the mood, and it can also change the relation depending on the background that it's against with. The same thing happens with the cream and the ivory. They give us a sense of elegance and calm to a sight. So it's elegant to have to add those type of now there are different type of schemes that we can use, and there are here some of them. I'll give you some explanations and we will see it in the color wheel, and then how can we see it as an interior design case. So it's the monotone, monochromatic, analogous, complementary, triad, and tetrad. And the monotone we already know, so it's a color scheme with just one single color of low chroma in one very limited range of values. So it could be any one of the colors of your hue that you choose. The monochromatic scheme is a color scheme that uses variations. So if you look at the circle, the color wheel up, you'll see that there's a line, kind of 45-degree line, that it's passing through a specific hue. So the variation that goes through the center till the radius or the border of the circle is the different ranges for that particular color that you can use. So you have the examples on the left where you see the pink, ranges of pink, blue, and yellow, ranging from the lightest to the brightest, also with the darkest one in the middle. It's similar to the monotone, but with a wider range of chroma and value in a single hue. You have here some examples of two different color schemes. Now, with the analogous scheme, you'll see again, if you go to the color wheel, now you don't have just a 45-degree line. You have like an interval between two different hues, okay? So it can range through the green to the red, but they have to be next to each other. So the analogous schemes are created by using three colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, okay? Always like the range of the colors. And we have here some examples of the application in the interior. And then we have the complementary scheme, and here you'll see what happens. So if you look at the color wheel on top on the right side, you'll see that now it's passing through the middle. It's doing the going from 45-degree lines from the border, the upper border, to the lower border. And here the complementary schemes are created by combining colors that are in the opposite sides of the color wheel. And usually consists of only two colors, but also can be kind of enlarged to the tones and tints and shades. And we have two examples here of some application of that scheme. Then we have the split complementary scheme. So again, we are still working with the opposite of each color, but then with an interval from each side that use color either from the side of the U opposite or the base U. And here some applications. Of course, like the ones that we are showing now are not so much used as the first ones that we have seen. Especially the last one, it's kind of hard to find. So the triadic scheme, in this case, you see that there's three colors equally spaced around the color wheel. So you have here the orange, the kind of green or blue green or water blue, and then the purple, and the combination between them, it's what makes the triadic schemes. Then of course, if they are always in thirds, then you can rotate those axes and create as much different schemes as you want. The last one that we know, and this is the hardest, I couldn't find any picture to represent it. It's a tetradic color scheme. So again, it's in this case it's not three. So the last one, it's working with three that are dividing in thirds the color wheel. In this case, it's two complementary color pairs. So they are in the opposite sides and they can use a little bit of the substitute of the color. Now, the color and the context are very important. The way that they appear with the background, they can make it feel lighter, darker, smaller, bigger. So here we have an example of a red square that put in different backgrounds. It can red, for example, appears brilliant against a black background, duller against a white background, and orange with the red appears lightless. It doesn't shine through. And then it also, that the red square appears larger, looks larger on the black than on the other backgrounds that you have. So to sum up, it's like light colors appear lighter against the darker background, and dark colors appear darker against, lighter against a lighter background. A medium tone can be seen light or dark in contrast with the surroundings. Neutral gray will appear warm when placed in a blue background and will appear cold when placed in a blue So there's a mistake here in the slide. The black square will appear colder if it's within a cold color, and then of course it will appear warmer if it's against a warm color. Now just some slides to show how the color and the light affects the space. So warm colors appear closer and cool colors will appear further away from our eyes. At the same time, light color objects will appear always larger and lighter, and dark objects will appear smaller and heavier when we look at them. Usually we say that when we have long and narrow rooms, that we should end the walls with a strong warm color and with a light color from the sides, so they can feel a little bit less long than they are. Also, when we have a very high room, we can use a dark ceiling to reduce the height of a particular space. And then, of course, we can use color and pumps of color just to contrast and emphasize some particular parts of our project. Thank you.